Welcome to Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us today. We are joined by Doug Haubert. He is the elected city prosecutor in the city of Long Beach. And we have new crime statistics for 2012 in Long Beach, which at some level reflects kind of a Southern California trend. And I want to get a sense from you what you see from these crime statistics, which indicate that violent crimes continue to decrease, but we're now seeing spikes in property crimes. Well,
that's absolutely right. Across the country, violent crimes have actually risen in the last year. In Long Beach, they dropped slightly, about 5.3%.
Right.
But the big number that we're looking at right now is property crimes, which are up 10% over the last year, 2012 to 2011. And particularly, we're seeing an increase in residential burglaries and garage burglaries.
And let's talk about that, because we've spoken before about trends connected to the economy, that when the economy goes south, usually property crimes increase. We hadn't seen that in this last recession and downturn, but now the economy's turning around a bit, and yet now we're seeing the uptick in property crimes.
Well, there are a lot of factors that play into it, and I think right now we're seeing the accumulation of a few things in California.
Please.
Realignment is affecting property crimes.
But I really want to zero in on that, because I've heard other folks say that. I spoke with Gary DeLong recently. He's a member of the Long Beach City Council. But other folks who are elected or maybe working in law enforcement, they're not so sure if 109 is really a cause for these upticks in petty crime.
Yeah, there's really no question that realignment is one of the driving factors in crime right now. But I'll add to that, it's not the only factor. In addition to that, we've seen a drop in the number of police officers here in Long Beach. About 5 years ago, we had 1,020 sworn peace officers. And there's been attrition, a lot of retirements without replacements. So now we're at about 792 sworn peace officers.
That's a significant drop.
It's a significant drop. That's contributing to it. But also the budget problems that Long Beach and other communities have is having another effect. All the cutting of the after-school programs, the park programs, schools are cutting counselors and after-school programs. And what we're seeing here in Long Beach is a lot of juvenile crimes are on the rise, and they're crimes of opportunity. In the afternoons, for example, after school is out, we're seeing more residential burglaries, and we're also seeing more juveniles involved in those residential burglaries, and that's really driving our property crime increase.
So let's talk about how we can protect ourselves, because in the final analysis, we'd love to prevent any type of crime being committed against us, and there are simple steps that we can take that we just aren't always taking.
Well, you're absolutely right. And now more than ever, it's important to call and report what you believe is suspicious activity. The Long Beach Police Department about 2 weeks ago sent out a press release about an observant neighbor who called the police and thwarted a residential burglary that was in progress. Not only can neighbors call 911 if they see something that they believe is a crime occurring or about to occur, but there's a non-emergency number, so if you don't feel comfortable calling 911, you can report suspicious behavior to 562-435-6711. That's a non-emergency number that goes to the police department. And suspicious behavior can be almost anything, but let me just give you an example of something that's been happening. People have been going door to door, knocking on doors, almost as if they were salesmen or trying to sell things. Youth, for example, will do it. They'll say they're looking for a lost dog. What they're really doing when they knock on that door is they're looking in the windows. They're looking on the side yards. They're looking to see if gates are open. As they go door to door, they're looking for an opportunity to commit a crime. Often they do this in pairs, and if no one's at the door and it doesn't look like anyone's home and they see a gate that's open, they're going to go around back and they're going to try to get into the house. Very quick, take whatever they can and leave. Those types of crimes are really pushing our property crimes up, and they're doing it in parts of Long Beach that you don't expect to see crime. And that's why it's important for people to call the police. If they see behavior, even if they don't know that it's a crime occurring, report suspicious behavior. The police can put together these calls and develop patterns and trends and try to block these crimes before they grow.
What about home security systems?
Well, I think it's on the increase because of a number of factors. Obviously, we've got less resources, less police officers on the streets. You do have realignment, and that is a very real problem, and people feel less secure, I think, in general. And it gives them a sense of security and a sense of empowerment that they can do something to protect themselves.
But do you feel as if an alarm goes off, that will be a deterrent? Or if a potential burglar walks up and sees that sticker, which indicates there's a home security system, they're not going in?
You know, I think it does, and if you just go to the psychology of the people looking for crimes of opportunity, they're looking for easy hits.
Right.
You see a security sign, doors being locked. Those are things that tell a would-be robber that maybe it's best to move on to the next house. So every little thing you could do, putting up security cameras. These are little things that you can do to help.
And I actually know folks that have put up fake security cameras, but it doesn't matter because the bad guy won't know that.
The bad guys don't know that.
Right.
It still serves the same deterrent, sure.
As you may know, Counselor, the city of Long Beach is considering a gun buyback program. You obviously are not on the city council, so you're not part of that, but you would definitely be impacted by it. I really want to get a sense from you, as the chief prosecutor in this city, as a law enforcement official, what you think about the possibility of a gun buyback program.
Well, I'd want to look at any statistics to show how it works in other communities. Long Beach hasn't really done that. Los Angeles has used that strategy. I will tell you that the problem with firearms, especially getting in the hands of the wrong people, it turns what might be an incident of road rage into a murder or attempted murder. Unfortunately, hands get on guns, and when an incident occurs, now you've got someone that has deadly weapons, a deadly force that they can use, and they make bad decisions. People make bad decisions all the time. A bad decision with a firearm, though, can result in an irreparable event. And it's a tragedy, but Long Beach is no different than any other community. We have to keep guns out of the hands of criminals.
So along those lines, and I've spoken with other members of city government, there's a real confusion out there about what cities can do as it relates to gun restrictions, what states can do, what feds can do. You know, we're both lawyers. You may remember a couple of years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court held it was either Chicago or D.C. could not ban handguns. But yet there are some restrictions that cities can put in place that are permissible. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, if cities try to adopt regulations that interfere with interstate commerce, for example, people taking guns out of their home and across state lines, that's an area that can only be regulated by the federal government. And in fact, it was the United States Supreme Court that found that a local jurisdiction had overstepped its boundaries by trying to adopt a rule saying it was a matter of local control, but what it was really trying to do was reduce the amount of guns being transported. And that's a problem because you've got federal laws that are designed to do exactly that, and you can't have conflicts between local law and federal law. But there are a number of things, and cities are looking at controls in order to keep guns out of the hands of criminals. The Second Amendment obviously is a very powerful tool. And law enforcement and the public, I think, have to always accept and acknowledge that there are federal rules that are going to preempt local efforts. So the effort is a sincere effort, but you have to make sure that it's a legal effort before you go in that direction.
And I want to talk to you about the Second Amendment because, as I've mentioned on other episodes of California Edition, there is no doubt that in urban centers, we have one view of the Second Amendment. In rural centers, they have a completely different view of the Second Amendment. And it is remarkable how divergent those views are. As a leader of one of the largest cities in California, mostly urban, no doubt, how do you try to look at the Second Amendment in a way that arguably, or maybe not, balances these competing interests?
Well, actually, you raised a very good point. If you were to adopt a law that applied both in rural areas and in urban areas, you think about it, they're different. They're entirely different areas. We have a problem here with violent crime that does not exist in most rural areas in America. So when we talk about the important need to curb violence and curb guns getting in the hands of the bad guys, that's something that just doesn't resonate with people in more rural areas. And so a one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to work in both a rural area and an urban area. Obviously, our issues are very different here. We're in Los Angeles County. Los Angeles County has the largest concentration of gang members, the largest concentration of violent crime in America. And so we look at guns as a very different problem in other areas.
His name is Doug Haubert. He is the city prosecutor in Long Beach. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Carlos Carona. He is a member of the Riverside County District Attorney's Office. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition. It's Charter California Edition. Welcome back. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Carlos Carona. He is a deputy district attorney in Riverside County, and he is working with a team that is doing so much to try to protect the youth of the area, really. It's called the Youth Accountability Team, and I'm glad you're here, Carlos, to tell us about it. Good to meet you, Counselor.
Thank you for having me.
Talk to me about the youth. Well, let's back up for a second. Let's talk about at-risk youth. We hear that term. What does it mean?
Well, what that means to me as an individual that has been working with young men and women for almost 15 years.
Right, you had been a probation officer.
Correct.
Before you became a lawyer.
Right. I was a probation officer. I did work with young people very closely. And when I hear at risk, what that means to me is a person that has had obstacles, some because of their choosing, some mostly not because of their choosing.
Right.
And what I mean by that is many of our young men and women now are growing up in single parent households,
right,
being raised by grandparents,
right,
or by the system.
Right.
So at risk doesn't necessarily mean that they're involved in criminal activity, but certainly they have many obstacles and sometimes they do turn to criminal activity.
So talk to us about what the Youth Accountability Team is, its goals, and then we'll talk about some successes.
Okay. Well, the Youth Accountability Team is a multi-agency collaboration. So what I mean by that is that the local agencies, meaning the District Attorney's Office, Probation Department, local law enforcement, meaning the Sheriff's Department, and local law enforcement agencies, city law enforcement agencies, along with the school districts, have all collaborated in order to address at-risk youth, in order to try to work with them closely on a one-on-one basis. So, by the way, each team also has a counselor. So we offer counseling to a lot of our young men and women.
So it's not just law enforcement, it's not just discipline per se, it's really trying to work with these children to keep them out of harm's way, their own or others.
That's absolutely our goal.
And so I understand that this team is but one throughout the state. Other counties have similar teams, I understand?
They do have similar teams. They may not be called a youth accountability team, but they do have, generally, other counties do have diversion programs.
Right. Now, you have a series of programs, and some of them have been just uniformly successful. Give us a sense of some of the classes that you are teaching these students, these children.
Absolutely. What we do is that our probation officer, along with our counselor generally, and any other person that's on the team, puts on courses, classes, we call it programming, to address the various needs that the minor may have. For example, if the person was caught stealing and they're being diverted out of the criminal justice system, they go into our program and they may have to take a petty theft course. Or one thing that we've found dealing with young people, at-risk young people, is that they have self-esteem issues. And what we try to do is build up their self-esteem. Some of our programs really work with art. And what that does is allow these minors to express themselves.
I have to ask you about truancy, because we know there is a direct correlation between truancy and criminal activity. And I understand that you have facilitated a series of courses, interventions on the issue of truancy. Tell me about those.
Absolutely. Well, you're absolutely correct. Truancy does have a direct correlation with criminal delinquency. And I say that because during the summer months is when there's a spike in criminal activity by minors because they're not in school.
Right.
And also that's the first sign of possible criminal activity when a school district learns that a minor isn't attending school. We intervene. And what I mean by we is that I work closely with the school districts, and we set up what are called SARBs. There are various interventions. What I learned once I started working with the school districts do a phenomenal amount of work in order to try to keep the kids in school. What's a SARB? SARB, that's a school attendance review board. So prior to a case being referred to the DA's office, the local school does what's called a SART, S-A-R-T, School Attendance Review Team. They try to bring in the parents and try to address the truancy.
But how do you deal with the situation so it's not seen as punitive and seen more as supportive?
Absolutely. Well, what we do is that we actually meet with the whole family, one-on-one basis. And what we ask them is, what is happening in the home? What is happening in the home that is not allowing your minor to attend school? Many times it's, you know, we don't have clothing. We live too far away. Now with the budget cuts, busing has really been constricted. So a lot of the kids really live far away from, and we live in a relatively rural area still. And sometimes it's 5 miles away. And to have to walk 5 miles one way, walk 5 miles back.
It's not doable.
It's very, very difficult, especially with some of the parents that don't have transportation themselves. So they don't have vehicles.
So what do you do in that situation?
Sometimes what we've had to do is, you know, the school districts go out of their way. We might purchase a bicycle for them.
Wow.
It's still 5 miles, but I remember being young.
5 miles
and on a bicycle, it's not too bad.
Yeah, and this area is not too hilly, so it can work out.
So sometimes it's bus passes, regular RTA bus passes that we work with. Sometimes we try to connect them with maybe other
carpools
families that are carpools in that same community. So we try to bring the community together as well, see if there's someone in the community that can also help that family.
You mentioned self-esteem. Along with self-esteem, there's the question of anger. You know, I could walk around a mall and I can see 15-year-old boys and girls, and you can just look in their eyes and they are angry. I mean, it's and not about anything specific at that moment, but there is this just underlying anger that it just festers and is poisonous.
Well, we certainly see a lot of anger in a lot of our young men and women, especially the young men and women that have been taken away from their home many times because of Department of Social Services has intervened in order to safeguard these minors. And we do see a lot of anger. And that is one of the reasons why we have a counselor on each one of our teams. And it's free, free of charge. She's a certified counselor, not a social worker.
Whatever, I mean, I use that term not literally, but someone with a psychological background.
Correct, correct. So she has training, or he has training, and they work with these minors individually to address the anger, to try to resolve why it is that they're so angry.
I don't want to conclude without reading some of the letters you've received from some of your, should we call them graduates?
Yes,
because
were
they are
successful
very
on the
touching.
program.
Carlos, why don't you give us a sense of the letter, read a couple letters of what you've heard from your students.
Sure. And I brought these because...
We have about 2 minutes, just so you know.
Oh, 2 minutes? Yeah. Okay. I brought these because I wanted to make sure that when we talk about at-risk youth, we aren't thinking about just criminals, people that are just out there preying on society. The first one was a young lady, 15 years of age, and we asked them to write an autobiography, kind of so we can understand the obstacles that they've had to overcome to be here today. And this young lady wrote that one of her first memories was when she was in first grade, she forgot where her classes were, and she just walked out of school and went home. Her second memory, she describes as DPSS essentially coming in. She doesn't say DPSS, but that's who it was. Social Services came in and took her mother away. And she describes how her family, were known as alcoholics. She lived essentially in the system. She describes living with good foster parents, bad foster parents, and then finally coming back and living with her mother again. She also describes how her mother battled with drug use. Her brother, older brother, continues to use drugs.
How is she doing?
She actually is doing well. She luckily has made a decision to succeed in life. And at the age of 15, what we saw as part of the team, and I'm getting goosebumps right now, I really am, is that she looked at us in the eyes and said, I will graduate from high school. I will go to college because I want a better life.
That's fantastic.
So sometimes it's just convincing them that they are worthy of more.
His name is Carlos Carona. He is with the Youth Accountability Team at Riverside County's District Attorney's Office. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition. Welcome back to Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're still with us on the program. We are joined by two legends, if I may say. They are legends as it relates to the American Red Cross in Long Beach and Rio Hondo, which represents 21 cities, 2 ports, and Catalina. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Harold O'Mell and Leo Vanderlands. They are both active members of this chapter. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. How long have you been active in the American Red Cross?
I've been active about 20 years. I'm past chair. Leo and I have both been on there about the same amount of time, and we are both very passionate about it.
No doubt. And you had been the fire chief for the city of Long Beach.
That's correct.
And you had been an attorney representing maritime interests.
Correct.
And so Long Beach is in your blood in a lot of different ways. I'm glad to have you on the program to discuss March, which is American Red Cross Month. What does that mean, sir?
Well, each year in March, we like to re-engage with the citizens of the community. We like to celebrate what the Red Cross has done in the past year. We also like to have the folks know exactly what we can provide for them in case of a disaster and what we do on a daily basis.
And let's talk about that. Before, though, I want to get a sense of, when you hear Red Cross, you immediately think blood services. But it's not just that.
No, that's true. In fact, obviously the folks that we know, they know about the other services that the Red Cross provide. But if you talk to someone on the street and tell them you're a volunteer for the Red Cross, the first thing they say is, yeah, we know you guys draw blood.
Right.
That's it.
But what else? Leo, why don't you tell us what else the American Red Cross does, and then we'll go back to March.
All right, Brad, I shall. The other items that are quite important are disaster response.
Right, like we know.
Preparedness, health and safety services, service to the armed forces, and international relief. And, of course, blood collection.
And recently, we just celebrated, if that's the word I can use, the 3rd anniversary of the Haitian earthquake. And we know the American Red Cross was very involved in that. But today, though, I want to look inward, because I think we forget that we could be victims of disaster. We think about Hurricane Sandy, we think about the recent storm in New York. You went to Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina.
That's correct.
You know, the Northridge earthquake wasn't that long ago. We got to remember that we got to take care of ourselves. Why don't you tell us about that, Harold?
Well, during the month of March, one of the things we do like to do is challenge our citizens a little bit and try to get them involved in all of our services. Maybe do they want to give some blood, or maybe do they want to have a blood drive, or maybe they want to take some of our classes. They want to take CPR.
Right.
They want to take first aid, or they want to take an AED course, the automatic external defibrillator.
Right.
You see those hanging on the wall in the airports and public buildings and on cruise ships. And if I had a heart attack, I would want someone to know how to use that rather than have someone take it off the wall and be reading the directions. So that would be a thing for someone to take. And also it's fun. They get to meet people, and I think that's that's very important that they prepare.
And that's the key, is prepare and preparation. And I hate to admit, but I don't know that my home is as prepared as it should be. I'm actually moving in a few days, so I can promise you I'm going to get a preparedness kit ready. And this is an example of one. And it's simply a backpack. And this is enough for a family of 4 to survive for how many days?
For about 3 days.
Which presumably should be enough when you think about the abilities of California. I would hope it's enough.
That's true.
Tell us about what's in this backpack.
Well, actually, this is it's enough of dried food and water for a family of 4 for 3 days.
Right.
There's a radio in there, a battery operated radio. There's a flashlight in there. There's a knife. There's scissors. There's first aid equipment. There's pretty much everything you need to survive with the basics.
And arguably, you should have one of these not only in your home, but your car.
Right. This is the one that I carry in my truck.
Right.
I have another kit in my house that's equipped for 7 days, and we recommend now from up to 7 days.
You do.
From past experience with disasters.
Right.
3 days may not be enough.
Now, if you're not adept like myself in making kits like this one, the American Red Cross will sell you one.
That's correct.
So we can contact any American Red Cross chapter.
Or you can go online.
Online. It's that simple.
Right.
More good news, Leo, about the American Red Cross. You gentlemen clearly have obtained a lot of satisfaction in your involvement with the American Red Cross. And as a result, this chapter is launching an ambassadors program. You are heading up that ambassadors program. Why don't you tell us about it, so if we're interested in getting involved either in this chapter or others?
The program is intended to recruit emissaries who will represent us in the various cities. As you stated earlier, Brad, there are 21 cities involved. Some of them are new to us. So we're in the process now, and Harold has consented to be the ambassador for Long Beach. We have someone for Whittier, for Carson, for Cerritos, but we've got quite a few other cities to cover.
You just added, is it San Pedro?
And Wilmington.
And Wilmington.
And Carson.
I mean, these are significant cities in our region.
They are, and they have recently been added to our jurisdiction, if you will.
So explain what an ambassador does, how one can become an ambassador, and how we can get involved generally.
Let me do it backwards.
Please.
On the becoming part, for people like Harold, they already have the Red Cross background, so they can do the chore, which we'll get to shortly. But for people who are interested in becoming one, we have a mentoring program in which we will hopefully educate those who are interested in what the Red Cross does and what it can do.
Okay.
So that information then can be passed by the ambassadors to the representatives of the cities that we're talking about, as well as the clubs and youth groups in those cities, where we hope we can make an appearance and educate them as to the value of the Red Cross, not just nationally, but to their community.
And what is that value? I really have a sense that we don't have a sense of how important the Red Cross has been and can be. You know, here we are in beautiful sunny Southern California. We don't have Katrina or Sandy or the Haitian earthquake.
But we do have disasters which are much more local.
I agree. But
and the Red Cross covers those, and there is no cost to the recipients at all. All of this money is furnished by the Red Cross, and fortunately the Red Cross gets it because of the generosity of its donors.
You and me.
That's right. There's no government support for this agency.
I want to ask you about Katrina. You mentioned you went down to Louisiana, and I want to hear your views from the heart about what it was like to be there and to be that volunteer to help those in need during Katrina.
Well, I was fortunate. I got to work in Atlanta and Biloxi and Gulfport and New Orleans, and the Red Cross literally saved hundreds of lives. I saw it firsthand.
Right.
It was a life-changing event for me, really, and I've seen just about everything.
You were the fire chief in Long Beach, a major city.
But when you see 100 miles of our coast that's completely destroyed for 2 miles inland, and there's absolutely nothing there, and there's concertina wire, and there's military patrolling it, and in the back in the bayous where the people are actually starving to death and all their homes are red tagged, there's no way to get them out. We're shipping in hundreds and thousands of meals ready to eat from the military and from the British military, and it was really a tremendous experience for me, a life-changing one.
And how did your training, not as a fire chief, but as a member of the American Red Cross, prepare you?
Well, the Red Cross, the training is great. I'm trained as a government liaison, so as soon as I got there, they assigned me Harrison County and Hancock County and said, go meet with the county officials and see what they need. And so the training I had from the Red Cross was fantastic.
Gentlemen, I just want to thank you so much for what you're doing for the people of this region, for the American Red Cross. Remember, March is American Red Cross Month. Please, please, please consider preparing your family for a disaster. You just never know. You just never know. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition.